Welcome back. We are looking forward, hopefully, to continue to conclude the Igeres Yudalid, the 14th epistle of the segment of Igeres HaKodesh, where we're holding, I believe this is the 6th class. It's not such a long chapter, not such a long Igeres, but it was definitely a loaded Igeres, a lot of depth. But Baruch Hashem, B'chazdei Hashem, we're able to pull through to establish its structured message, to understand, to glean what the Alter Rebbe is conveying in this Yudalit. So, Igeres HaKodesh, the 4th segment of Sefer Tanya Kadisha, we merited to conclude the first 3, we did mention a few times Igeres HaKodesh is distinct in comparison to the first 3. We had a full presentation in the beginning of the Igeres 10 Yud, just a few over. It's a click away, and as we mentioned, wherever you're watching it, but focusing easy to access all the previous classes, including this presentation, which also has an important backdrop of Igeres HaKodesh, which we mentioned has its own overall backdrop, if you will. Igeres HaKodesh 10, the website, the original website, which you can access all the previous classes, is tanyaonline, oneword.com. tanyaonline.com. And, or again, wherever you're watching, you always give you a shekayach to the host, especially Israel National News, which again, for many years, carrying this as a weekly, a big shekayach, yet again. And but again, the advantage of the original, which they post as well, is that just simply access to all the previous classes. As an example, your newcomer 6th class on this Igeres, on this presentation, in this letter of the Alter Rebbe. So we have to know, in order to understand what today's information is all about, of course we have to be in tune to all to the messages of the previous classes on this very Yudalid, understandably so. So it's set up in a way that, besides the original website, easy to follow it with the text that we mentioned a few times, the way it's set up, and namely to have access to all the previous classes, not only on the present Igeres, but all the previous Igeres and the previous classes from the very beginning of Likutei Amarim, which we had the Schus Godel Ubeyeser to learn, study together, to conclude. Again, those segments we concluded. We do mention periodically, Tanya has 5 segments, which is with precision. This is the Teirah Shebiksav of Teirah Chassidus. We again had the chus to conclude the first 3, and you have them all lined up because many times Alter Rebbe himself cross-references from one segment to the other, one page to the other. We do periodically when something is a little more elaborated in other chapters, just a simple click away to have the understanding of the present information, the way it's elaborated and expanded on in other prakim. And again, so easy to get there and understand it a little deeper and a little more, again, in an elaborate manner. So we're holding the Zeu Shekosov Tomi Deini Hashem Alikecha Ba. This is what it says in the pasuk, constantly in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Eretz Yisrael. Baruch Ato Adinoi Eloheinu Melech Haolam Shakil Bidbari Nia Bidbari. The Zeu Shekosov, this is what it says. What is this? I really asked, let's try to even make it even more brief. Look into the other classes, understand what the Alter Rebbe is saying, V'zehu. And I'm going to make an effort to recap even more succinct than the previous classes as we give an introduction. Many times we take a little too much of the class to recap the previous class, but we'll try to do this again because it's really a click away. It's a click away. It takes nothing to go to the previous classes and capture the idea, which with the Alter Rebbe is concluding Vizel, and this is what it says: the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu are constantly on Eretz Yisrael, and then constantly on Eretz Yisrael. And then the pasuk says Mereshis Hashanah V'adach Hashanah, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. If they're constantly on Eretz Yisrael, why do we break it apart? From the beginning of the year to the end of the year, especially the beginning of the year, as we mentioned again, underscore the Alter Rebbe's question, clear question. towards the beginning of the Sigeras. The beginning of the year is adjacent to the end of the previous year, and the end of the present year is adjacent to the beginning of the coming year, so it's one continuum. Talmidei Hashem Elokecha is correct. Always Hashem's eyes on Eretz Yisrael, la'elam vad, forever. Why are you breaking it apart? The beginning of the year, the end of the year, and Alter Rebbe explained that yes, every single year there's a new air, there's a new light coming from the Eidence of the infinite dimension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the inherent infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and shines onto Eretz Yisrael by extension to the entire world via the counterpart of the Eretz Chayfetz on high, which would be Memaleh Kalam. And again, of course, we're saying this very brief. You've got to see the previous classes. And therefore, the Pasuk itself says, yes, Tommy, but there's something new happens every single year. It was never and totally new and renewed air, which was never shown ever, and that comes in every single year. And the previous air ascends, is removed, and usually, again, to break it apart, we say Rosh Hashanah, Badach Hashanah. Of course, we know what is Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Hashanah. So at the night of Hashanah, that's why it's such a sensitive time. We spoke about this so many times. All the air, the energy of the previous air is left, and what is remaining is just kind of a skeleton, if you will, of the air. The question is asked in Kabbalah and Chassidus: how does the world exist? How is the world in basic function if the air has left? We know the only reason why there exists anything is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Mahaba, Machayim, Mekayim, gives constant life and existence to reality. And Hashem pulls away that energy, not it falls apart, it decays or anything else, it just disappears. So the whole existence of everything is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving it life and existence. So if if Hashem's air is removed, how is there a world? Again, the question is asked in Kabbalah and Chassidus, but at the end of the day, it's basically a skeleton. Hashem leaves and allows the world to exist, Am Yisrael to exist, that Am Yisrael should be able to elicit the brand new air, the brand new light and energy, which is meant to come into creation, starting from Eretz Yisrael, by Eretz Yisrael, by extension to the entire world. That's why it's such a sensitive, it's a precarious time for that matter. A person submits himself, Rosh Hashanah, asks HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Tamlichoni Aleichem, and commensurate to that submission of Am Yisrael as a whole, and every Yid individually, and that's the way Hashem allows that Er Chodesh and Mechudesh to come in, but to come in, many times it comes in, but not in a synchronized, in a harmonious manner, and it comes in, and the positivity of the energy takes time. Sometimes you take a picture, you open your camera, you see something blurry. It's the same camera which is focusing on this, which you're meant to, you focus the camera in the beginning, but unless it's blurry, it takes a bit till it straightens out, and then you get the crystal clear picture. We don't want that to happen with that very beautiful, tremendously energized air to come in and for part of the year to be blurry. We want it to be crystal clear on the onset, and crystal clear the way we as human beings appreciate what is crystal clear. Individually, needs in his own life, children life, healthy children, parnasa, and all of it in abundance. Am Yisrael as a whole has all the brachas. We want it to be a perfect hamshacha. The hamshacha should be this er chadash, which again exists, but it should come down in a very synchronized, harmonious way, and it should be manifest in good, which is apparent to the human eye and revealed with a revealed bracha, which is again appreciated by the human eye and the human experience. And that's what we daven and we say Tehillim and Shofar. As we said, Shofar is an expression of bittul, total bittul to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as we explained in the previous classes, an iconic type of submission to HaKadosh Baruch Hu precisely through the Shofar. We're not even talking to you, Hashem. We're not even calling from the depth of our heart. We're just blowing, which comes from the deepest part within the human being. And Dafka Shofar of an animal. It's again demonstrations of our humbleness in the face of the grand Eibishter, this being a day of coronation, this being a day of crowning Hashem. In other words, our submission to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and accepting Hashem's melucha upon us and upon the entire world, and that's the way it just comes in a very healthy manner. But this is what happens at Rosh Hashanah. Therefore, the pasuk would divide. Again, this is just tidbits of the previous class, and that's why the pasuk divides. Mereshis Hashanah v'adach Hashanah, beginning of the year to the end of the year, because the new year, it's a total new ayr, a different new ayr, and again, you're talking about an infinite proportions. I mentioned it sounds like a contradiction in terms proportions, but in infinite proportion. So it's a total new ayr. So how could you say it's a continuation? It's not a continuation. Again, you have to see the previous classes, and that's what he says. Told me, again, the message, if you recall, that because Hashem's eyes on Eretz Yisrael, and Hashem renews his connection, his gaze, his focus, his ashpah towards Eretz Yisrael, on Eretz Yisrael, and towards Eretz Yisrael, and therefore the Alter Rebbe demands, and this is the message of the Pedic, that we have to emulate our Creator to constantly support Eretz Yisrael without any interruption, tamid, for the people Yidden living in Eretz Yisrael. And not only that, we have to renew, just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu renews his commitment to Eretz Yisrael, and again by Eretz Yisrael by extension to the entire world. This is the Tamid that Hashem Meireshis Hashanah V'adach Hashanah, total new Eir Chodesh M'Chodesh in every single year. So too we have to also extend ourselves in a way that we would periodically increase. And this year's increase in comparison to next year is already not exactly adequate. Just like this Eir Chodesh M'Chodesh, in comparison to the previous year, it's a total new Eir. The previous Eir is not comparable to the new Eir, which comes in every single year. So too we have to increase with increasing measures, not just a bit more, but in a way that you could define it. It's a Eir Chodesh. Of course, someone has the ability to extend his tzedakos to Eretz Yisrael in a total new form and fashion. Yes, in comparison to the previous year, it's a total new form and fashion, but when the new year comes, or a new tukufot comes, and a person has the ability, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives a yid even more parnasa, he has to renew his commitment again on a total different level, similar to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's total new Eir, which comes in extension via this Eir Chodesh M'Chodesh into Al Olamis, and ultimately into Elam Hazeh, Eretz Yisrael, and via Eretz Yisrael, the entire world. That was the message of the Pedic. So the Alter Rebbe goes to the lens of Chassidus, how it explains this pasuk, but with this pasuk and with the understanding with the lens of the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Teres Chassidus Chabad, on this pasuk, the Alter Rebbe, which again in the end of the day Hamaisu or Iker, Alter Rebbe has a message, namely in all these chapters. Again, you can see it in that very Yud, the beginning of 10. The part of the backdrop of Ageres HaKedesh is focusing on that famous Aliyah, which a Mendel Haradok, a colleague of the Alter Rebbe, went with his Chassidim. Many families ascended to Eretz Yisrael, and they were going through a very difficult time. And Alter Rebbe had a fiery campaign, if you will, to raise serious funds for them. And that's really the way they were able to sustain themselves. Even it wasn't there was never enough. But Alter Rebbe did enormously. They should be able to simply live and have bread on their table. So this is part of the. So again, you can see it there in the beginning of 10, which we mentioned before. This again is, of course, a classic line with that backdrop of supporting Bnei Yisrael, supporting in a way of tamid constantly without any interruption, but more so to increase, to establish this giving with increasing measures. Meaning to say, not only just a little bit based on what the Alter Rebbe explains over here, that we're able to increase on grand measures, so shall we do. And if another tukuf, another period, another epoch goes by, it could be a year, or even less than a year, and Hashem gives me the ability to do more, I'll do not stam a bit more, I will do a lot more. That in comparison to the previous giving, it would be called the Eir Chodesh M'Chodesh. Again, in the context of tzedakah, that this is what it says, that the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu are in Eretz Yisrael from the beginning of the end of the year. What is it with the eyes? You want to say about HaKadosh Baruch Hu's focus? And you're talking about an Eir Chodesh M'Chodesh of Eir Chodesh M'Chodesh of HaKadosh Baruch Hu on Eretz Yisrael, So why Eini Hashem? What does the eyes have to do with that? And again, we know every word in Torah, every expression in Torah is with a maximum precision. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's words, and if HaKadosh Baruch Hu writes the words Einei, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted it chose rather the word Einei Hashem Elikecha, the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is, of course, with maximum precision. What is the connection to the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu on this Er Chadash Mechudash, this light, which is coming from Chachmei Allah, the Chachma of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And he says the Chachma of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Keli to the Ein Sof, as we explained in detail in many places in Tanya. And in this very chapter, Chochma, it's a Koyachma because of its smallness, if you will, the Yud, which is the smallest letter of the Aleph Beis, it's because it's a Keli to something so much greater and so much, which means less confinement. It's because it's such a small letter. It's because it is the container to something so much greater. The greater the air, the smaller the container, of course. Because it's not about me, it's about the light, as opposed to the other ices of Hashem's holy name. It's a grander container, so when it contains a light, it's a measured, it's a confined container, because the ice is a grand ice, a grand letter, and therefore this which it contains is commensurate to the Keli. Not so by Chochma. Chochma is about Koyach Ma. We explain this as well in many places. Ma means what? Meaning to say that, this is an overwhelming type of experience, that to me it's Ma, or in the world of Chochma it's Ma. And therefore the Yud is the small Yud. Again, we're saying this in such a brief manner. You see again the previous classes, which we spoke about, this idea of Chochma, why that's a Keli, why that's the interface of the Ein Sof with Eilamais. That's the perfect Keli to the Ein Sof of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, that's the Rebbe says, because we're talking about Chochma, the Ha'ar of Eira Chochma, but again, Eira Chochma, precisely Chochma, even though when we say Chochma, it's the first of the cognitive faculties, Chochma being a das, but nonetheless, as the Rebbe explains, again, a good period for reference, the third chapter of Likutei Amarim, the first segment. Click away, it's all the way at the bottom again on the screen, but it's the third chapter of Likutei Amarim. So the Rebbe speaks about Chochma, it's a Koyach Ma, meaning to say it's a Keli, it's not about my appreciation or my structured appreciation. That begins in Bina. Again, saying this very briefly again. Chochma is by tuning in to something which is transcendent of me. That is inherently what Chochma is, a Koyach Ma. And therefore Chochma is the Keli to the Ein Sof. The Rebbe famously has it in Perik Lamed Hey, in Likutei Amarim, the famous Ha'or, Kasher Shamaiti Mimeiri, the Mezir Magid, of course. The Chochma is the Echad Emes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because it's less a structured faculty, more something which is batul, the Kechma, to something grander, which is, of course, the Ein Sof. And therefore Chochma itself becomes the Echad Emes of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu, of the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You could see that Ha'ar, famous Ha'ar, Lamed Hey, in Likutei Amarim, the first segment. We usually don't learn Ha'ars, but I believe that one we did learn. We do mention it periodically, because again, this is what Chochma is all about, and therefore the Torah uses the Lashon Einei Hashem Elikecha on a simple level. You look at someone's eyes, you could see if there's Chochma or not. The Torah doesn't say it so clearly over here, even though it comes across basically with the same idea, but on the surface, a person is a wise person. They have wise eyes, and they're not so wise. It comes across with their eyes. It's not something we have to elaborate. So wisdom, and not only that, the acuity, the sharpness, that dafka comes across more the chokhmah dimension, more the bina dimension of, again, the world of the intellect. And therefore the pasuk says, "Eini Hashem Elikech." And therefore the eyes are this which relates to the very Eira Chochma, which we're talking about over here. This Eir Chadash Mechudash, this new and renewed Eir of the Ein Sof of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which comes via Chochma, because Chochma is that conduit, because Chochma is that interface, because Chochma has that Koyach again, which contains this air and less contained or more overwhelmed by what is coming and what is passing through it. Koyach ma. Because the bitla chokhmah. So chokhmah is the einayim, the eyes are kinuyim to them shacham, and the ha'ar of this eira chokhmah. Therefore, the wise are called the eyes of the congregation. So, of course, when you say eyes, because they are just like the eyes have through a person's eyes is able to capture in a moment what's going on. Especially a wise person opens his eyes, takes a look, he gets the whole idea, pretty much the picture. Of course, there's no end. You can get more and more as you scrutinize or look out for this which you're trying to look out for. Scrutinize it, of course, there's more and more information one can glean, but there's something which the eye captures in a moment or very quickly what happens, and this is why the wise are called the Einei Ha'ida, because they're meant to capture. If you're talking about a community, the Chacham of the community has to have that eye over the community to understand and appreciate in detail what's really going on in order to be the proper guide, the proper leader, the proper Chacham, to lead and guide the community and bring them into the Derech HaOlah based Kale. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu with programs and activities, meaning to say Shiuri Torah and mitzvahs and Shiurim and different types, again, programs of Limud Torah and programs of doing mitzvahs and helping others to do mitzvahs and chesed, the way any healthy community is built. You have to have the Chacham which leads and guides the community, and he has to, and this is the reason why Chacham are called Einei Ha'eda, because their eye and their appreciation captures, similar to the eye capturing an entire scenario in moments. And then when the Chacham lives and deals with the community, there's something less robotic of his relationship to the community, but rather very, very intricate, and the greater the Chacham, and the greater the knowledgeable leader, or the experienced leader, and the understanding leader, and a leader which appreciates the individual like they appreciate the masses, like it says by Moshe Rabbeinu. It's about famous expression about Moshe Rabbeinu is a leader because he was a leader of Rebbe Yisrael as opposed to Klal Yisrael. The Klal Yisrael, now we mentioned Klal Yisrael, and Klal Yisrael, no, a leader is about the individual, and consequently you're a leader of Klal Yisrael. It's about the individual, it's about capturing the situation the way it really is, dealing with the situation really is, and that's where you have successful Chachamim, which are Einei Ha'eda, plural, but again, it's the Chacham of that Eda and other Eda, or Chachamim when there's a grander Eda congregation. They are called the eyes of the community. But this is on the simple, right? The simple, and therefore you find communities which are Oila based Kale, they're on the Derech Oila based Kale, they're successful, because they say the community is good as its leader. Yes, that's the way it is, because the leader is not just someone who's positioned himself or is positioned just to be the formal leader and even do a bunch of good things. No, there has to be the eyes on the community, the individual, the community as a whole, and every individual as an individual. The eyes are a great function, just like, again, the eyes capture the details much more than any other of our faculties. We can hear a story, but then we see the story. It's a different idea. That's what Chacham have to be, the Einei Ha'eda, on the simple level. But beyond that, the Einei Ha'eda, they're called, the Chacham are called Einei Ha'eda, besides this simple reason, is because there's something about the Chokhmah which plays such an important role to be a leader in a community. And this is the reason, if you're lacking that Chokhmah, yeah, you could do a lot of good things, but you're not necessarily going to be successful in leading the community to bring them physical benefit and spiritual benefit, a combination of both, the integration of both. There has to be a certain Chokhmah. And that's why the Chachamim are called Einei Ha'eda, because the eyes give out wisdom. And therefore, when we're talking about the Eira Chokhmah, which represents the Ein Sof coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu on a yearly basis, in the previous classes on the yearly basis, namely, this is what we're talking about, Meireshis Hashana V'ad Achri Shana, but it's Today says it briefly that it could really, every single day, you have to see the very previous class, there's an idea that every millennia has its therefore, in the history of Am Yisrael, in the history of the world, every millennia has its message based on that overall grand associated with that millennia. But namely, the Alter Rebbe is talking about every single year. And every single year there's the Eir Chodesh Mechudesh coming from the Eir HaChochma. And therefore the Pasuk says, Einei Hashem Lekecha, because the Chacham are called Einei Chachamim Chochma, right? Einei Ha'eda. They're called Einei. Vavir Eretz Yisrael Machkim, and again, what's the connection to Eretz Yisrael? We know, as the Gemara says, that the Avir, the air of Eretz Yisrael, brings Chachma. There's a little too much Chachma there, but if it's pulled out of the right, tighter context and framework and bracket, it causes a little bit messy. Ederein is a Chacham, but that's what Eretz Yisrael is. Avira, the very Avir of Eretz Yisrael is Machkim. It's evident. And it's associated with the Eir, which comes primarily into Eretz Yisrael. By extension, Eretz Yisrael to the entire world, as again we explained and elaborated in the previous classes. And therefore, Avira Eretz Yisrael Machkim. And therefore, because it's connected, or it's a result of the Einei Hashem Alikecha, the Chochma B'Kodesh Baruch Hu, this Kechma, which is a conduit to the Ein Sof, to this Eir Chodesh Mechudesh, which comes in primarily into Eretz Yisrael. Thus, Avira the Eretz Yisrael Machkim. So this Ha'arav Hamshacha, again, the next few lines, hopefully we'll be able to finish the chapter. We should. It's a culmination of everything we learned, and a lot of it we said orally. So let's see how we can go move on. This Ha'arav, this Hamshacha, this energy, actually to me, this, even though it's constant off the beginning, it's not one level, it's not one continuum. It's not one continuous energy which flows into Eretz Yisrael. Mimei Eilam, from the beginning of time. Every single year it's a total new light, a supreme, to translate it accurately, a supreme brand new light. Because the light which was renewed and shown in the present Rosh Hashanah, in the coming Rosh Hashanah, it's going to be removed, preparing itself for the world, and again, it's our preparation. That's why we have to take Chedesh El very serious. As it says, it says Chassidus in Sifrei Musar, that these referring to the Bachsa, the Yerach Yomim, the 30 days, referring to Chedesh El, and to come like a mention to Rosh Hashanah and the Hashanah itself. To understand, it's not like any other yontif, and even every other yontif, the Gemara says, a person has to, in the end of the day, with all the simcha, always has to maintain a healthy composure, which is again a prerequisite in our Avodas Hashem. A yid has to be a composed yid. Together with that a time of yontif, it's different, because it's a samachta b'chagecha, we rejoice in our yom tov, and Rosh Hashanah, even that. Rosh Hashanah is not a regular yontif. Yes, we eat. We drink. The Alter Rebbe brings the Shulchan Aruch. It's brought in another pasuk. Michul Mashmanim, Sumam Takim. It's a special day, but it's not a day like any other yontif. It's a very serious day, and you learn this chapter, even minimally, you realize, whoa, this is really something very grand is happening behind the scenes, which is establishing the very scene as it would unfold in the coming year. If you look at this year as an example, without elaborating. And therefore a yid has to submit to do whatever he can to draw this great Eir in a way, again, namely this Eir should come in a very perfect way. Something that the human being, again, appreciates as an individual, and Am Yisrael as a whole, and the entire world as a whole. And such the expression, or this is the expression, b'teiv hanir v'anigo, an apparent good, in a revealed good. Because a new Eir is about to enter into the world. Because the previous Eir, which came into the world, previous light and energy which came to the world, that the previous Rosh Hashanah, removes itself in the Eid of Rosh Hashanah, the day before Rosh Hashanah, back to its source. And we are drawing a brand new Eir. Hashem is ready to give this Eir Chodesh u'Mechudesh. And it's up to us. Again, we have to remember that's the way Hashem created the entire system of the relationship between creator and creation, that creation makes a difference how the creator reacts to, HaKadosh Baruch Hu reacts to our conduct, the conduct of creation as a whole, Am Yisrael, bepratius, pratius, every single yid. That's why it's such an important, serious time. But back to what the altar and again, we draw this HaKadosh Baruch Hu already has this ready to bring it in to say the ishtalshalus, literally transfer the order of evolution, meaning say to all the elements, namely into this element, starting from Eretz Yisrael, and by extension Eretz Yisrael, the entire world. But it depended again how Am Yisrael prepares itself for this great light. Through the Aved of Chodesh Elul and Rosh Hashanah and so on, as we explained, we elaborated a bit more in the previous classes in this very chapter. And this is the reason, the Zeu Shukosov, this is the very reason why it says Mereishis Hashana Vadachris Shana Levada. That's why it doesn't say Leilam Vad, even though again at the beginning of the year we mentioned again is always perfectly adjacent. There's no space between the beginning of the year to the end of the previous year, and so the subsequent year to the year, or the end of the year to the subsequent year. But nonetheless, the pasuk breaks it apart and says, no, true. It's a 1 year, it's a package for 1 year. At the end of the year, the air ascends, and a brand new air would come into Seder Ishtalshlus, into all elements. And in this world, which this is where the purpose is, of all creations, as we know, into Eretz Yisrael, and by Eretz Yisrael, into the entire world. And therefore, the Alter Rebbe points out something interesting in the spelling of Meireshis, which demonstrates this very idea. Therefore, it says Meireshis Choser Aleph. If you look at the pasuk, how do you spell Meireshis? Look at Bereshis. Bereshis Bar Elokim, the first word of Torah. Beis Reish Aleph Shin Yud Sof. And in this pasuk, Meireshis Hashana, it should have been Mei Mem Reish Aleph Shin Yud Sof. But it's missing the Aleph, because he's telling us, the pasuk itself is telling us, that Aleph, that energy coming from the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Aleph Yishalaylam. Also, the Aleph, as it says in Kabbalah, represents the Chochmah, Aleph Chochmah, is missing when Rosh Hashanah comes in. It removes itself in the night of Rosh Hashanah. Ad acharat tkiyas, till after tkiyas, which again, as we mentioned, that space and that time between the night before Rosh Hashanah till tkiyas, that's the simple reason why Yidden take it so serious. They don't stop saying Tillim in a constant, a demonstrative subjugation to HaKadosh Baruch Hu via the recitation of Tehillim, and that overall understanding and appreciating the seriousness of the time, and in constant davening supplication to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, beseeching HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that this air should come down in a very synchronized, harmonious way. So it's between the night of Rosh Hashanah till after Tkiyas. You see, in healthy Kiyas, it's not a simple time. After Tkiyas, especially when the Tkiyas go well, which is also a sign, a signal that things are moving on high in a very smooth way. Also depending who's blowing, someone who's connected to the on high. When a Rebbe blows, a Tzaddik blows, Chassidim were always in tune, because the way the Tkiyas flow, that was a sign, a symbol, or a sign of how this energy is coming in to creation, to all elements, ultimately to this creation. Of course, not with everybody's blowing, usually can be sometimes, if you're in tuned, so you're shown of the one who's blowing how things perhaps would ultimately manifest, but it's namely the one who is truly connected to on high, a tzaddik blowing a shofar, a rebbe blowing a shofar. Chassidim are always in tune, because the smoothness of the blow would be a symbol or a sign to how the energy is coming in. This is what Tkiyas is all about. And therefore, that time between the night before Rosh Hashanah And the time of Tkiyas is a very, very, very significant time, as explained. Because at that time, at Tkiyas, Yerid el Chodesh Elin Yeser, a brand new light and a greater light, not stam proportionately greater, but disproportionately greater. As the Alter Rebbe writes, Eir Chodesh Mechudesh, a total new air. Which never shone from the very beginning of creation. Eir Elin Kozeh, such a supreme light, which is coming and came in this present year. And Bahu and this Eir, and therefore because it's a total new idea. And again, disproportionate than the previous year, which of that year was disproportionate of the previous year, all the way back to the beginning of creation. Which one might ask, we had the question the other day, how do you have differences in Ein Sof? It's infinite. It's infinite. How do you have more infinity? But it's explained again in Sifrei Kabbalah, in Chassidus, different discourses of the Rabbeim explain that within Ein Sof, they could have additional level with Ein Sof itself. And this is what's really happening over here, because it's Eir Chodesh Mechudesh. Now the Rebbe uses the Lashon Ein Sof again. That's what Chachma is. It's a conduit to the Ein Sof. But nonetheless, every year, it's a Eir Chodesh Elyon Yeser, greater. There was never such a light shot, which shone into Seder Ishtalshus, into all elements, ultimately to this Eilam, as we mentioned again, primarily via Eretz Yisrael, from the very beginning, from the very year, first year of creation, which comes in presently in this very year. And that air comes in and invests in the land of life on high, which the Alter Rebbe explained in the previous classes towards the beginning of the chapter. That's the level of Malik Kalamin, Vishalamato, which would be Eretz Yisrael, to vitalize all the worlds through the entire span of this year. So it's there, ultimately manifest. But yet, the Alter Rebbe concludes this chapter. Here the Alter Rebbe is something important that sometimes we feel, okay, we got over the Tkiyas, phew, we got the Eir and we did it right. Why not? The Yid could and should and wants to do it right. Says Tshuva, okay, now I'm starting to, so to say, deal with my own issues. That's the idea of Yom Kippur, to confess and to, identify and articulate our flaws and so on. That's what really Yom Kippur, which that's in general the difference of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Rosh Hashanah is not a day of tshuva per se. Of course, a person comes with, an action or a whole image of subordination towards a Kodesh Baruch Hu, and of course, it's a heart of tshuva, and it's beseeching Hashem that I want to connect to you, and if I didn't connect to you perfectly the previous year, no, this year I really want to have that harmonious relationship with you. Am Yisrael as a whole begs and beseeches and implores by HaKadosh Baruch Hu that there should be that perfect flow between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu and us, the fluid, so to say, kind of relationship granted, and therefore we come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of course, with a submissive type of approach, which is of course associated with tshuva, a heart which says, yeah, I want to do it differently, but we don't focus on the details and the specificities of this which we have wronged. That's already Aser Simei Tshuva, Yom Kippur. Therefore, Yom Kippur we do the Al Chet. We don't do that in Rosh Hashanah. For that matter, even the Avinu Malkeinu, if you ever take note, we don't even say the Avinu Malkeinu Chotanu L'Fanecha on Rosh Hashanah. We omit that because that's already after Rosh Hashanah. Then we're kind of focusing on the details, so to say, of our conduct, our misconduct, and Yom Kippurim, asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu and being specific with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because we know that in any relationship it's important to detail and to articulate this which caused the friction between one party and the other. Because if you keep it just to quickly know, that's why Yom Kippur, it's so important, tells us how important it is to itemize an issue. So for Yom Kippur, people ask Mechila on each other, not that forgive, yeah, probably the guy gets the message. No, it's important to make the call. This is Shulchan Aruch, clear, black and white Shulchan Aruch, because the whole idea of Yom Kippur is in order that the idea of vidui, of confessing, is because in order something should truly not reappear in my psyche, so to say, ultimately my action, my thought, speech, and action, and it should taka be removed, and it should be something of the past, is only when I articulate sin. It's similarly when every relationship. Yeah, I think we're okay. No, you sit down and you say, that's what happened. And that caused a certain distaste, and sometimes beyond distaste, and hurt. And then the person, the other party would agree, and it would sort of say resonate and flow through, filter through the system. And yeah, I got it, and I apologize, and I truly regret. That's the way you could build a good, healthy relationship. And there's not anything which is following the, so to say, good relationship. Following it, and another thing follows. In the end of the day, there's a bunch of other stuff crawling in that, so to say, good relationship. No, it's not really good, because all this stuff is just right behind the scene, or maybe sometimes creeps through the curtain as well. The idea is to get rid of it. In order to get rid of it completely, you have to articulate the matter, what caused the friction, and that's when you're able to even verbally utter, yes, I did so, and I saw you were uncomfortable, but I did it anyway, and nonetheless, and I regret exactly in that very moment, in that millisecond when I felt that your discomfort, and I regret it, I will not do it again. Something verbally utters these words. That's when you could put it to rest. And this is the same thing with the relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You see how many times we say the same vidui on the day of Yom Kippur? We say it 10 times, including before Yom Kippur and so on. Because it's important to be specific in order to put to rest anything which caused that friction between me and my Creator. And here the Alter Rebbe says, this is important as well. It's not only after Tkiyas, okay, you drew the Eir, it's right there, but it's not, so to say, making its way into reality, into creation, and into reality, into your reality, which is so, that we are so desperate, because again, as human beings, we're totally dependent on Hashem's brachas, and Hashem's Eir, Am Yisrael, every Yid as an individual, Am Yisrael as a whole. So Alter Rebbe says over here, it's important, you should know this, you brought it down, it's there, and it's there to be manifest in your life, in your community's life, in the life of a Yid in Eretz Yisrael primarily, and all of Am Yisrael, and in the entire world, it's all there. But there's one more component to bring it out of the box, and to make it manifest in every area of life. It depends. And again, individually and collectively, it depends on your tshuva, on the Maisa Tachtenim, in the entire 10 days of tshuva. Culminating with Yom Kippurim, which is the Yom Slicha V'Chapara, the day of atonement. And that's why Yom Kippur is such an important day. Like Yom says, Yom Tevim, because a person, if he categorically, Yom Kippurim is one of the exciting days in the year. He comes clean with his Creator. This is the conclusion of Yudalit. This is a very important message over here. Because as much as we in our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, just like in a relationship with another human being, we feel that everything is good, Hashem tells us, and just like we can appreciate, that we cannot have the previous details which brought a certain unpleasantness in every area, if it's pupil and students, and it's the spousal relationship, parents and children. You cannot have those different unpleasant experience, so to say, following, even not that starkly, because somewhat it's something of the past, but nonetheless, inconspicuously following the relationship, because in the end of the day, it'll pop out one way or another. It's very important that we take care of the details in order to make sure that the relationship is strong, well anchored, and has the ability to flourish and to embellish itself, in other words, become stronger and deeper and so on. So too with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem says, yes, you made it, you did it right, you drew this new energy. Again, together, working together with me, Kaviyachal HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and I had this Chodesh Mechudosh, you did your Avodah of Chodesh in a proper manner, you did your Avodah of Rosh Hashanah in a proper manner, you drew this Eir. Hashem says, it's important now, utilize it, says to me, Tshuva, I got it, you won the lottery. In order to pick it up, you got to do a few things, fill out the form and so on, whatever it is. You have to look after the details. Hashem wants an impeccable relationship with His people. And of course, we want to be, so to say, come clean with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in order to have that perfect relationship with our Creator. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm giving you 10 days. Deal with the flaws. look after them, do tshuva, true repentance, come to Yom Kippur like a mensch, say the Al Chet like a mensch, and the end of Yom Kippur, Hashem pulls it out of the bag, so to say. He gives a Valdik year, and that's the reason why right after Yom Kippur, it's a Lecha Chayil Lachmacha B'Simcha. We tune in from the state of Merirus, seriousness, right away to Simcha. But again, Simcha Shel Mitzvah, joy, because we realize that at that point right after Yom Kippur, when we do the Aser Mitzvah in a proper manner, and we do the Yom Kippur in a proper manner, the energy is unleashed to give every Yid a beautiful year, a year of Teiv Hanir V'Anigla, the good, the tangible and palpable good, which is apparent and revealed. And therefore, Leicha Chil Lachmacha B'Simcha, rejoice with this hashpah that Hashem gave you, and collectively all of Am Yisrael is running with it to do their lulav and nesrig and sukkah. There's no even avenus. It says the first day of sukkah is the 4 days. There's no cheshbon even avenus, because it's a different type of relationship, and the energy has come out, and it's pouring itself over. And therefore, sukkah is a day of simcha. And the whole Sukkot, even in comparison to the Yom Tovim, which is also about Simcha, this Sukkot itself is called Yemei Zman Simcha Seinu, and culminating with Simchas Torah. Of course, you see the connection. We're dancing with the Torah. We're excited. Yismach Yisrael ba'Eisav, Yidden are rejoicing with their Maker, and Hashem Yismach Hashem b'Maisav. Hashem is rejoicing with His creation, particularly Am Yisrael. And the whole year, you have the Hashpah throughout the entire year. An abundance in Bona Chayim Mezeinu Revicha. Individually, the Yid has whatever he needs. Am Yisrael has whatever they need. And in the end of the day, B'Hai Hashem Melech Al Kol Haaretz, a healthy world, a world which is in tune with its Creator. V'Yedo Kol Pol Ki Ata Pa'alte V'Yedo V'Yovim Kol Yitzur Ki Ata Yitzarte. A perfect connection between creation and Creator, which is of course translated in the great redemption, which we also anticipate. May it be now. Have a wonderful night.